So I came across another stack of folders in the Strange As It Seems archives for the next few episodes. Check this out. We've got, I guess, from the world of sports, right? Pool, polo, roller skating, rope skipping, soccer, and table tennis. And I realized as I pulled these out, these are in alphabetical order. I actually pulled all of these folders out of I had these old ancient file cabinets that I was carrying around with me for years and years. And I finally got tired of lugging around the file cabinets and put everything into boxes. So it's a little bit haphazard, but this is a stack that looks like was in the file cabinet in alphabetical order. And so what the heck? Let's just, some of these only have one or two stories in them. So I figure we'll just burn through these for the next few episodes. Take a dive into pool, polo, roller skating, rope skipping, soccer, and table tennis. Welcome back. This is Jeff Hicks, curator of the Strange As It Seems archives and grandnephew of John Hicks, who created Strange As It Seems back in the late 1920s. Before I dive in, I think we'll take polo. Let's take pool and polo first. We'll take the first two, switch the letters around. But before I dive in, I'd love to ask, please hit the bell to subscribe. If you like content like this, punch the button to like, and by all means, leave a comment. If you have any strange, unusual facts about you or your family, or even just that about any of these subjects, or just any reactions in general, would love to hear your thoughts and comments, and all the engagement that you guys have been doing is going a long way to helping me bring this iconic, almost 100-year-old brand back for the digital age. So let's dive into pool and polo. First, right, we'll flip the letters around, the L and the O. There's only one in here on pool, and I think we had a guy that did this, but here's one from 1942. I'm not sure if he had done 4 or 5, but here's a guy that did 5 pool balls, balanced them, one on top of the other. A guy by the name of Penny DeRoche, and he's from Stanford University. And sure enough, the corroborating letter here, I love this director of publicity at Stanford, Chilton Bush, sent the letter corroborating. It was done 3 or 4 years ago. This was in 1942. Mr. Penny DeRoche, a student at the time, took a picture of the balanced balls, which later appeared in Life magazine, interestingly enough, approximately a year ago. It's believed that Mr. DeRoche's first name is really Bernard Norman DeRoche, in case any of the DeRoches are out there, whose 1939 address, here it is. I guess he lived in Berkeley in 1939, but I was hoping to get a picture, wasn't able to, but we went with the letter from Stanford University as the dope, as they would say, the proof of the feat. So that's it for pool. That was a pretty short folder, but let's get into polo next. And it was my grandma. We'll go into the 1950s, who had a few facts just on the history of polo, which I think is pretty fascinating. I used to go to the polo matches in Atlanta. I'd take my kids. It was a great way to spend a Sunday. There was a polo field near us in Atlanta. Great sport to watch. A little confusing. But actually, if you are a little confused by pool, there's a few things in here that will kind of help us figure it out together. Some cool facts and certainly some great history here. But the real history, it's actually the oldest sport in the world. It was played, this is from 1955, my grandma Elsie. It was played with a stick. It's the oldest sport played with a stick and ball, I should say. Originated with the Persians more than 4,000 years ago. Again, this is in 1955. Of Persian origin, it was played in the Orient long before the Christian era. As the Persian national pastime, it was known as Chogan. Pretty interesting. At least 4,000 years ago, very much like polo. In fact, it's pretty much the same as it was. And it looks like here another fact. I'm not really sure if this was John Hicks or Ernest Hicks, probably John Hicks toward the end, but international polo matches have been played for over 2,500 years. This was in 33. Pretty interesting there. And then how about this fact? Again, from my grandma. She always found really cool facts about amazing women. And this was played by women. Polo was for over 1,000 years. Crazy. Queen Shirin organized a team of feminine riders back in the 6th century, starting a sport enjoyed by Persian women all the way up until the 16th centuries. That is amazing. No better place to study the past of a people than through its art. And apparently that's how they found this out. They found a couple of paintings that were donated to the Smithsonian that had women in veils with veiled faces playing polo. Isn't that great how sometimes art can tell history? It was in the reign of Chogan 11. End of the 6th century. The ladies of the Persian court played polo, and the king watched them. Now we'll go back to what looks like the oldest comic strip in these folders. It goes all the way back to 1931, just a year or two after Strange as It Seems was started. March 10th, 1931. We had featured Marianne Smith before. She's in this one. She made a living as a pea shooter. That was a great story. But here in the bottom right, we've got Seward Carey, who in 1931 was 73 years old, and he had played polo at that time for 50 years. Crazy. In the past 2 years, Seward Carey, despite his advanced age, played more games of polo than any of the other 70-odd players at Meadowbrook. And crazy. And here's a handwritten letter from Seward Carey on February 7th of 1931. On my return from Bermuda, I find yours of January 22nd, sent to Meadowbrook, something that came out last year. I had a most satisfactory summer of polo at Meadowbrook, played more games than anyone there out of about 75 players, and I hope you'll return the article in the envelope, and then I guess one of these he was able to keep. But it was his 50th season at Meadowbrook. Crazy. Seward Carey, 73, began his 50th consecutive season in the saddle by playing with the victorious Whites at number 3 field. Philip Iglehart, 17, younger brother of Stuart Iglehart, Yale's brilliant malleter, rode to triumph with the Blues at Cochrane Field. Here's a good one from 1934. Crazy here, too. It looks like polo is never played on the Polo Grounds, which used to be the home field of the Giants, the New York Giants, the baseball Giants, right? Not the football Giants. This is way, way back before they became the San Francisco Giants. But apparently the baseball team at the time played all their games on the Polo Grounds, the home field, but polo was never played there. But apparently they trained on a actual real polo field where polo was played in spring and down in Miami Beach, Florida. So a great fact about polo and the old New York baseball Giants. And at one time, it looks like indoor polo was a thing, at least in New York. Here's a letter from Milton Rubin Publicity. I'm glad the contributions. He sent along a photo of Carol Bruce, the young star of the movie, I guess, Louisiana Purchase. That's probably somewhere else in the archives. But here was, I guess, the corroboration of the fact that Polo Field, there's a Polo Field inside an airplane hangar. There was no photo, but a really cool article here. The Great Outdoors Panorama, part of the Pegasus Club, I guess, where all kinds of horse events, equestrian events were taking place. And there's an arrow. There's the Pegasus, the airplane hangar. I guess it was moved. They bought it and they moved it there so that they could play indoor polo in inclement weather. Crazy. Really cool article here too about all the things going on at the Pegasus Club. The horse show, I guess there was a pretty cool bar, the Sunbow Room, crazy parquet dance floor with an inlaid horseshoe, has caused wide comment. And several facts in here. This guy, Tommy Hitchcock Jr., apparently was just in the early days, or at least in the 1930s, and many have regarded as the greatest polo player really of all time. I guess there's a kind of a Messi of Lionel Messi of polo today, that is Adolfo Cambiaso. The Argentinians that are the real Argentinians are the real masters of the sport today. But back in the 1930s, this guy, Tommy Hitchcock Jr., was an absolutely extraordinary polo player, and a really amazing story of this guy's life too. But here's the first fact. In 1930, well, the first one I'm pulling anyway, Tommy Hitchcock Jr., he made a 170-yard shot for a goal. This is back at Meadowbrook as well in 1931. And here in 1936, he'd been rated a 10-goal handicap for 13 years. And handicap, a little bit different in polo. It's basically, you're kind of measured, it looks like, in handicap. There's like a numerical rating from -2 to 10. Extremely rare. I think there's only 10 handicap polo players in the world today, all from Argentina. But let's see. It's kind of like golf, but golf is like a stroke. In this case, it's just not expected goals that you'll make, kind of like in golf with expected shots. But it really just measures a player's horsemanship, strategy, field awareness, and team play. And that's what made Tommy Hitchcock one of the greatest. So at this point in 1936, he had been rated a 10, which is a perfect score, for 13 straight years. And then, of course, 3 years later, he still was a 10 handicap player. For 16 years, he had been a 10 goal polo player, 10 handicapped. I think that might have been, John Hicks might have put that in wrong. Only polo player in the world, I guess, with a 10 goal ranking. That's how they put it in this paper. A cool little photograph there of Tommy. But check out this story. 10 goal Tommy. This is a really cool article here on him. Very poetic. The sun was shining and the French skies were blue on that February morning of 1918 as a couple of American boys in the uniform of the Lafayette Corps hustled into their flying clothes. Props were turned and motors idled, then roared under lightning-quick inspection. Machine guns were mounted, ready to spray death as your hose sprays water. Wrapped in their heavy clothes against the chill of the morning, they'd find 3,000 feet up. They buckled crash helmets and shook hands. "See you in a half hour," Bill said one. "Okay, Tommy, good luck." They might have been setting out for an early morning class in math or English, judging from their voices. And if this were not a crazy world, that's what they would have been doing about that time. But this is a crazy world, and this was a crazy, gallant business. A few minutes earlier, they'd seen a pal, a Frenchman whose name was Minot, come fluttering down to earth, shot down by a German flyer. Likewise, perhaps a boy that should have been in school, studying his philosophy and math. Once in the air, the Newports that were the mounts of the two American boys shot up like birds. The German, gloating a bit over his victory, still hung up in the air, but not for long. As the Newport's buzzing little wasps gained altitude, they turned to run for it. He had turned too late. First one Newport, then the other dived at him as lead poured from machine guns. Now he was the quarry. Being chased back over his lines, a stream of lead found his wing, cut away a strut, and he went into a spin to crash behind his lines. And just for luck, the Newports swooped down over the trenches, emptied their magazines in a defiant, roaring gesture, and turned for home and a breakfast of ham and eggs. Great opening to a story about 10 goal Tommy, huh? So, and then it jumps ahead 10 years back to Long Island's Meadowbrook. But apparently he was a war hero, too, from World War at the time, right? This is all before World War II. This is right as it was the drumbeat for World War II was happening in 1938, right? Started, I guess, 1939 when Germany invaded Poland in September. But yeah, pretty amazing story. Would love to share this. I'm going to start a blog post and put some of these articles up in case people want to read the entire article. Some of these articles are amazing. I wish I had time to share more of it. But the great 10-goal Tommy Hitchcock Jr., one of the great polo players of all time, and a World War I war hero debut. And just a few more here in the polo folder. This is a pretty cool one from 1936. Goldie, 25-year-old mare. She's a polo pony. This is at the Riviera Country Club out here on the West Coast, Santa Monica, California, near where I live today. Wonderful photograph. Beautiful horse. Wow. Goldie with her 4-week-old, or I guess her colt. Closes a picture of the mare Goldie and her colt. Goldie is at present 25 years old, still playing polo. The colt, unfortunately, died when it was about 4 weeks old. So poor Goldie. And then we've got, this is great. The final one here looks like this is pretty cool. I always love the dramatic art. You know, when you see this art of Doug Hayes, that this is the era that came after my great uncle John Hicks died in 1944, and my grandfather took over. Ernest Hicks took over in 1944 for about 4 years, and I just love the dramatic art of Doug Hayes. But here's a pretty cool one. The Horsemen of Turkestan play bareback polo, and instead of using a ball, they use the carcass of a goat. How's that for 1947? So that wraps up this episode on pool and polo. Please hit the bell to subscribe, hit the button to like, and by all means leave a comment. Love the engagement. Goes a long way to helping me bring this 100-year-old brand back for the digital age. And I'll leave you, as I always do, with a quote from John Hicks in his first book, Strange as It Seems, when a comic strip was first launched back in 1928. The author launches this book of the curious in nature and humankind on the vast sea of public opinion, with the hope that it will fulfill its mission to entertain and acquaint its readers with some of the marvels of the world in which we live.